Hey family, this is day 78 of our Reading Through the Bible Together in a Year series. Today we're covering the book of 1 Samuel chapters 8 through 10. Now, so far we have this kid, Samuel, who is given as a gift to his barren mother because she promises to dedicate him to the temple. And she does when she has him, and God starts using him as a prophet, starts speaking through him, talking to him and speaking through him on behalf of Israel. And what's cool about Samuel is that he even gets to this point of being like a priestly figure in that he makes sacrifices for Israel so that they can win the battle in the end of chapter 7. And so Samuel is like an uplifting figure. So let's see how it's starting to play out today. When Shamuel was old, he made his sons judges over Israel. Now the name of his firstborn was Yoel, and the name of his second, Abiyah. They were judges in Beersheba. His sons didn't walk in his ways, but turned away after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Shamuel to Ramah. They said to him, "Behold, you are old, and your sons don't walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations." But the thing displeased Shamuel when they said, "Give us a king to judge us." Shamuel prayed to Yahweh. Yahweh said to Shamuel, "Listen to the voice of the people in all that they tell you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me as the king over them. According to all the works which they had done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt even to this day, and that they have forsaken me and served other gods, so they also do to you. Now therefore listen to their voice. However, you shall protest solemnly to them, and shall show them the way of the king who will reign over them." Shamuel told all Yahweh's words to the people who asked him for a king. He said, "This will be the way of the king who shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them as his servants, for his chariots and to be his horsemen, and they will run before his chariots. He will appoint them to him for captains of thousands and captains of fifties, and he will assign some to plow his ground and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war and the instruments of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, to be cooks, and to be bakers. He will take your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, even your best, and give them to his servants. He will take 1/10 of your seed and of your vineyards, and give it to his officers and to his servants. He will take your male servants, your female servants, your best young men, and your donkeys, and assign them to his own work. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you will be his servants. You will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you will have chosen for yourselves, and Yahweh will not answer you in that day." But the people refused to listen to the voice of Shamuel, and they said, "No, but we will have a king over us, that we may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us, and go out before us and fight our battles." Shamuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of Yahweh. Yahweh said to Shamuel, "Listen to their voice and make them a king." Shamuel said to the men of Israel, "Everyone go to your own city." Now there was a man of Benjamin, whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bechorath, the son of Aphiah, the son of the Benjamite, a mighty man of valor. He had a son whose name was Shaul, an impressive young man, and there was not among the children of Israel a more handsome person than he. From his shoulders and upward he was taller than any of the people. The donkeys of Kish, Shaul's father, were lost. Kish said to Shaul his son, "Now take one of the servants with you, and arise, go look for the donkeys." He passed through the hill country of Ephraim, and passed through the land of Shalisha, but they didn't find them. Then they passed through the land of Sha'alim, and they weren't there. Then he passed through the land of the Benjamites, but they didn't find them. When they had come to the land of Zuph, Shaul said to his servant who was with him, "Come, let's return, lest my father stop caring about the donkeys and be anxious for us." The servant said to him, "Behold, now there is a man of God in this city, and he is a man who is held in honor. All that he says surely happens. Now let's go there. Perhaps he can tell us which way to go." Then Shaul said to his servant, "But behold, if we go, what should we bring the man? For the bread is spent in our sacks, and there is not a present to bring to the man of God. What do we have?" The servant answered Shaul again and said, "Behold, I have in my hand the 4th part of a shekel of silver. I will give that to the man of God to tell us our way." In earlier times in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, he said, "Come, let's go to the seer," for he who is now called a prophet was before called a seer. Then Shaul said to his servant, "Well said, come, let's go." So they went to the city where the man of God was. As they went up the ascent to the city, they found young maidens going out to draw water, and said to them, Is the seer here? They answered them and said, He is. Behold, he is before you. Hurry now, for he has come today into the city, for the people have a sacrifice today in the high place. As soon as you have come into the city, you will immediately find him before he goes up to the high place to eat. For the people will not eat until he comes, because he blesses the sacrifice. Afterwards, those who are invited to eat. Now therefore go up, for at this time you will find him. They went up to the city. As they came within the city, behold, Shamuel came out toward them to go up to the high place. Now Yahweh had revealed to Shamuel a day before Shaul came, saying, Tomorrow about this time I will send you a man out of the land of Benjamin, and you shall anoint him to be prince over my people in Israel. He will save my people out of the hand of the Philistines, for I have looked upon my people, because their cry has come to me. When Shamuel saw Shaul, Yahweh said to him, Behold, the man of whom I spoke to you. He will have authority over my people. Then Shaul approached Shamuel in the gateway and said, Please tell me where the seer's house is. Shamuel answered Shaul and said, I am the seer. Go up before me to the high place, for you are to eat with me today. In the morning I will let you go and will tell you all that is in your heart. As for your donkeys, who were lost 3 days ago, don't set your mind on them, for they have been found. For whom does all Israel desire? Is it not you and all your father's house? Shaul answered, Am I not a Benjamite, of the smallest of the tribes of Israel? And my family is the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin. Why then do you speak to me like this? Shamuel took Shaul and his servant, and brought them into the guest room, and made them sit in the best place among those who were invited, who were about 30 persons. Shamuel said to the cook, Bring the portion which I gave you, of which I said to you, Set it aside. The cook took up the thigh and that which was on it, and set it before Shaul. Shamuel said, Behold, that which has been reserved. Set it before yourself and eat, because it has been kept for you for the appointed time. For I said, I have invited the people. So Shaul ate with Shamuel that day. When they had come down from the high place into the city, he talked with Shaul on the housetop. They arose early, and about daybreak Shamuel called to Shaul on the housetop, saying, Get up, that I may send you away. Shaul arose, and they both went outside, he and Shamuel together. As they were going down at the end of the city, Shamuel said to Shaul, Tell the servant to go on ahead of us. He went ahead. Then Shamuel said, But stand still first, that I may cause you to hear God's message. Then Shamuel took the vial of oil and poured it on his head, then kissed him and said, Hasn't Yahweh anointed you to be prince over his inheritance? When you have departed from me today, then you will find 2 men by Rachel's tomb, on the border of Benjamin at Zelzah. They will tell you, The donkeys which you went to look for have been found, and behold, your father has stopped caring about the donkeys, and is anxious for you, saying, What shall I do for my son? Then you will go on forward from there, and you will come to the oak of Tabor. 3 men will meet you there going up to God, to Bethel, one carrying 3 young goats, and another carrying 3 loaves of bread, and another carrying a container of wine. They will greet you and give you 2 loaves of bread, which you shall receive from their hand. After that you will come to the hill of God, where the garrison of the Philistines is, and it will happen when you have come there to the city, that you will meet a band of prophets coming down from a high place with a lute, a tambourine, a pipe, and a harp before them, and they will be prophesying. Then Yahweh's Spirit will come mightily on you, then you will prophesy with them, and will be turned into another man. Let it be, when these signs have come to you, that you do what is appropriate for the occasion, for God is with you. Go down ahead of me to Gilgal, and behold, I will come down to you to offer burnt offerings and to sacrifice sacrifices of peace offerings. Wait 7 days until I come to you and show you what you are to do. It was so that when he had turned his back to go from Shamuel, God gave him another heart, and all those signs happened that day. When they came there to the hill, behold, a band of prophets met him, and the Spirit of God came mightily on him, and he prophesied among them. When all who knew him before saw that, behold, he prophesied with the prophets. Then the people said to one another, What is this that has come to the son of Kish? Is Shaul also among the prophets? One from the same place answered, Who is their father? Therefore it became a proverb, Is Shaul also among the prophets? When he had finished prophesying, he came to the high place. Shaul's uncle said to him and to his servant, Where did you go, he said, to seek the donkeys? When we saw that they were not found, we came to Shamuel. Shaul's uncle said, Please tell me what Shamuel said to you. Shaul said to his uncle, He told us plainly that the donkeys were found. But concerning the matter of the kingdom of which Shamuel spoke, he didn't tell them. Shamuel called the people together to Yahweh to Mizpah, and he said to the children of Israel, Yahweh, the God of Israel, says, I brought Israel up out of Egypt, and I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all the kingdoms that oppressed you. But you have today rejected your God, who himself saves you out of all your calamities and your distresses. And you have said to him, No, set a king over us. Now therefore present yourselves before Yahweh by your tribes and by your thousands. So Shamuel brought all the tribes of Israel near, and the tribe of Benjamin was chosen. He brought the tribe of Benjamin near by their families, and the family of the Matrites was chosen. Then Shaul the son of Kish was chosen, but when they looked for him, he could not be found. Therefore they asked of Yahweh further, Is there yet a man to come here? Yahweh answered, Behold, he has hidden himself among the baggage. They ran and got him there. When he stood among the people, he was higher than any of the people from his shoulders and upward. Shamuel said to all the people, Do you see him whom Yahweh has chosen, that there is no one like him among all the people? All the people shouted and said, Long live the king! Then Shamuel told the people the regulations of the kingdom, and wrote it in a book and laid it up before Yahweh. Shamuel sent all the people away, every man to his house. Shaul also went to his house in Gibeah, and the army went with him, whose hearts God had touched. But certain worthless fellows said, How could this man save us? They despised him and brought him no tribute, but he held his peace. And so we begin the story of the kings of Israel with the first one, Saul, or Shaul. And Saul, when we meet him, he's a donkey herder, and he's lost his donkeys, his father's donkeys. And that's hilarious in itself. But also, he is the one that is chosen by God, and there's no denying that. David later on is going to give that as a reason why he doesn't kill Saul prematurely, because he recognizes Saul as God's proclaimed. And what we saw today is that when Saul goes to Samuel, God points him out like, this is the one I choose. And then as Saul is leaving, he starts prophesying, which I didn't know that was there, but that's there. Saul is prophesying on behalf of God at some point, and so we know that Saul is the chosen by God. But this person that he's picked is a donkey herder that doesn't know where his donkeys are. And that's important to know, especially contrasted with David, who is a shepherd of the flock, and he protects his sheep. There is supposed to be that stark contrast in our minds, at least once we get to the David part. But when Samuel brings all of Israel together and is going to pick out Saul, and he's picking tribe by family, and then finally the family of Kish, and Saul's nowhere to be found, and he's hiding himself among the baggage. It's just like Saul. What everybody loves about Saul is that he's so much bigger than everybody else, right? He's tall. They see him and they recognize, clearly he must be fit for the job because he's large. And this is coming from a people who have dealt with the Nephilim and the half-giants and all of that stuff. And so I think we're supposed to see the connection there too, as they recognize, clearly this is going to be a good king because he's big and he's been prophesying. And so I want to draw our attention to the fact that Israel goes up to Samuel, and it's because Samuel's sons are terrible judges, and Samuel's old, and they don't want judges anymore. But this whole idea that they want a king like all the other nations, they want a king to judge them like all the other nations, and then when Samuel is frustrated about this, Yahweh speaks to him and says, it's not you that they've rejected me as their king. And that's interesting. And I think something that can speak to our modern context. I mean, often in the church and Christians, we have this tendency to want leaders of the church in place who tell us what to do. We want a great minister so that he's encouraging and he can lead the ministries and he can do the outreach and he can do that. Like we want the king to go before us, and that's like. There's nothing wrong with a good minister. There's nothing wrong with leaders of the church. But if the lay person of the church wants that leader put in place because they want them to take the responsibility of being a child of God, like that's a problem. Because one of the things about Israel with God not appointing a king over them is that all of them had the responsibility of being of the kingdom of priests. Like, they were all of royal descent. They all had to live up to Yahweh's code, Yahweh's life ethics. They were all given the responsibility of obeying God, and it didn't fall on anybody in between them, right? It was their responsibility, and they want to give up this responsibility. And like us in the church, we should think about that. And we shouldn't just want our church leaders to be the children of God on our behalf. Like, we are the children of God too. We have to obey the rules. Like, do the things, do the good deeds, be in the ministries, do the teaching, do the Bible reading, doing all of the stuff that it means to be a follower of Jesus. Like, it's our responsibility. There's nobody above us that we should be putting in place so that we don't have to have the responsibility. I think that's one of the problems when church people just, all they want is a great minister, or all they want is a good elder, or all they want is a good deacon, or all they want is a good benevolence leader. It's like, well, actually, everybody has that responsibility. Like, everybody has that responsibility. And yes, some will rise to the top and have better experience and be more motivated and push hard and be good at it. And yes, we should let those people lead, and that's fine, and that's great, and I support that. But it is every single person's responsibility to be a member of the church as well. It's every person's responsibility to be a child of God, a follower of Jesus. And I mean, I think that sometimes even spills over into our own, into our reading and understanding of the text, of the Bible, right? What we like to do in our setting is we like to look through this thing and we like to find the list of what we can do and what we can't do, right? Because having a list of a discourse, a 95 thesis, shall we say, but like having a list of what we can do and what we can't do, that eases the mental burden of trying to figure it out. Like, don't get me wrong, we should be obeying what God wants us to do, and we should be listening to the things that he says for us to do and to not do. But if we only ever are looking through this thing as a list of do's and don'ts, we're doing that because it's easier than realizing that some of this stuff is complicated and some situations in our life are gray. And it's the wisdom from this text that transforms us into the type of people that can act out God's will among a world where this doesn't have a specific yes or no answer. I mean, even like there are some situations that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, or there's some political agendas, or there's some things where there's nowhere specifically in the Bible that is a clear yes or no. We have to deduct it based on reasoning, and we also have to speak into the context based on our own understanding. And that's complicated and it's difficult, but that is our responsibility as those who claim to follow Jesus and want to be a good impact on the world, is that we shouldn't just be trying to come up with a list of what we can do and what we can't do, and that's religion. No. I mean, it's all about, this thing is meant, it's mostly narrative. I mean, it's meant for us to think. It's meant for us to be critical thinkers. It's meant for us to understand the wisdom of what happens in this text so that we can apply that wisdom, God's wisdom, the wisdom of Jesus, to the situations that we have on a day-to-day basis. And yes, that is complicated. But we shouldn't be wanting a king to go before us. We shouldn't be wanting a king like all the other nations. We shouldn't just be wanting a set of rules that makes it so we don't have to think about how we interact with those around us. We should always be thinking. We should always be taking on the responsibility of following God's law for ourselves. Like, that it is our responsibility to be followers of Jesus, to do the things that the followers of Jesus do. It's our responsibility to speak the wisdom of God into the world around us. And the only way that we can speak the wisdom of God into the world around us is for us to meditate and think and let the wisdom of God transform us into people whose will is aligned with God. I mean, we shouldn't just be somebody who has a different will than God, but we obey God's will anyway. The whole point is that our will and God's will, we're supposed to be ever more transforming so that our will becomes the same as God's will. Because we want what God wants. Like, that is what it means. We want God's opinion. We want God's, I'm struggling to come up with a word, but we want to be a part of God's ideal for the creation that he created. And the only way that we get there is by reading the story, understanding it in the terms that it's our responsibility to glean the wisdom and let it transform us. And so I hope I didn't lose you somewhere in there, because I said a lot just then. But I think that phrase, we want a king just like the other nations, is way deeper than we give it credit for. Because it's not that they wanted to disobey Yahweh. It's that they no longer wanted the responsibility of having to obey Yahweh themselves, right? They wanted somebody out in front of them doing it for them. And we do that. All we do is do that. We don't want to feed the poor. We want some government social program to create a system so that the poor gets fed, right? We don't want to bring the homeless into our home. We want to support the social ideology of the government to create a system of welfare and management so that the poor, or so that the homeless have somewhere to stay. Like we don't want to take the tasks on ourselves. We want somebody else to do it for us. We'll support them. You can be my king so that you do the thing. It's like, no, every single person who claims Jesus is a follower of Jesus and is tasked with the things that Jesus tasks his followers to do. We don't put a king before us. We have to, in some ways, become the kings. We have to become the kingdom of priests like God has wanted his people to be from the beginning. So I've rambled a lot, and I hope that I've given you something to think about. It's a really heavy moment in the story of Israel when they go from the judges and priests and having their own responsibility of being the light to the nation to laying it on one seat, one person, one king. And they'll have a good one. They'll have David, who has his faults as well. But past David, it just all goes downhill, ending with, several hundred years later with the conquering of Assyria and Babylon. So, take that with you. Think about that. And hopefully that you can still have a wonderful day.